Hi, today we're going to be focusing on a typical type of exam question, something that you'll most likely get, especially looking at behavioural treatments for phobias. So the first things first, when you see a question like this, you need to focus on the command words. So the first command words, obviously, for this one will be discuss. And discuss just basically tells you that you both need to do both AO1, that is hit some knowledge and understanding, and AO3, which is obviously looking at some kind of evaluation. Okay, just be really careful that you do make sure that you pinpoint what specifically you need to be doing. Okay, so what are we outlining first of all? We need to outline the behavioural treatment. So you would have been taught, because on the AQA specification, there are two main behavioural treatments for phobias, which are systematic desensitization, that's SD, and flooding. Okay, what you also need to be highlighting as well as part of your command words is the term refer, because when you see the term refer, in fact, actually when you see a scenario, so you can see the scenario on top, a mother and father are discussing, etc., that tells you that you do need to do some application to the STEM. Okay, so that basically tells you AO2 is needed here. So this essay is looking at 3 different assessment objectives. So we have AO1, AO2, and AO3. Okay, so when you have these 3-way splits between what you actually have to do in an essay, AO1 is always going to be split at 6 marks, AO2 is going to be split at 4 marks, and AO3 is going to be split at 6 marks, basically. So you do less AO3 than you'll normally do if it wasn't a kind of STEM question. Okay, so let's take a look at this type of essay. So let's take a look at the first section. And a nice way, again, there's loads of different ways to write an academic essay. So I'm just showing you one example of how this essay could be approached. Okay, so I would say start off with both looking at AO1 and AO2 together in a first section or first paragraph, however you want to call it, because it kind of blends nicely together. Okay, so in this specific section, we are looking at key terminology, which I would highlight as yellow. Link to STEM, very important. If you don't link to STEM, you're not going to get on the top bands. And then you need a hook. And what hooks do are specific connective words that help your essay flow and give your essay a lot more coherency and makes it easier to understand. So a lot of people do miss out hooks in their essays, such as just saying one strength is or one weakness is, where hooks actually make your essay coherent. Okay, that's really important, especially if you want to reach the top band. Okay, so the first part, for example, it started off straight into the STEM, exactly what the mother and father are discussing, and then we start looking at getting our key terminology in. So straight away, we've spoken about systematic desensitization. Okay, and then what this essay strategically does is she breaks out what kind of is systematic desensitization, but again focusing on keywords such as step-by-step process, relaxation training, anxiety hierarchy, and gradual exposure. Very important. So these are key terminology linked specifically to the knowledge. So this is you describing your knowledge about what is meant by systematic desensitization. Okay, and then the blue bit, which obviously is your linking to the STEM or the scenario, for example, is where you've basically lifted or spoken about what is actually going on and why you've decided it's actually, for example, systematic desensitization. So it's the steps. First of all, you stay in a car. You stay in a swimming pool car park, for example. You move to the viewing area, so that's going gradually, and eventually progress to having their son enter the pool when he feels ready. So this kind of describes a step-by-step gradual exposure technique here. Okay, and then again a nice hook there. In contrast, okay, so again we are meant to be really talking about the STEM as much as possible, but making it flow coherently. So you use words like in contrast. What the father is basically saying is that they need to implement what is called flooding technique to their son who refuses to go in a pool. And then we do a nice link to the STEM as well by lifting up what is there. So confronting a fear directly, etc. You could talk about throwing their son into the deep end. So this is examples for you to see. Okay, so here you're supposed to be basically linking your knowledge of key terminology for the two therapies to what the scenario is saying. Okay, so here remember you're only going to be getting 6 marks for your AO1. So you've spoken about some good key terms here: systematic flooding. You spoke about relaxation, immediately confronting fear directly, gradual exposure, and so forth. Okay, some nice keyword rich AO1 stuff here. Okay. And then we go into AO3. Okay, so remember, so your teacher should have been teaching you that AO3 is something that needs to be developed. Okay, so it can't be too generic, it can't be too superficial. You need to have something that's really going to be developing your points. Okay, so how I'm breaking it down for you is you talk about the first issue, for example. So remember, you're discussing. Discussing is very, very important, because discussing, you're going to use the same point in 2 ways, for example. One way you're going to be looking at a strength or an issue, and the other way you're going to be looking at a strength and so forth. Okay, so you kind of have to be able to look at things from both perspectives. So this essay decided to focus on looking at flooding in terms of ethical issues. Okay, now the best academic way to do this here, to make sure you know what ethical issues are, is to actually do a very brief definition. Okay, so these issues involve concerns regarding the potential psychological harm inflicted on individuals. That's still a very generic term, but it's showing you're opening it up, you're showing that you actually know what it actually is. Okay, then what you need to do is contextualize, or in other words, give some kind of example. So here they talk about the example of how flooding can pose some kind of trauma, anxiety, and kind of distress, for example, which again, it kind of like pushes those ethical issue boundaries, if you want to put it like that. Okay, and then finally, this is where the meat of your elaboration is going to go as well. Okay, so you've spoken about why it's ethical or what the issues are. You need to basically speak about what we now need to do next, or why is it even important to be cautious, for example. Okay, so here an example is that we do need to prioritize people's mental health and well-being, especially when they're undergoing treatment, for example, and vice versa, etc. So you need to make sure that you need to talk about it afterwards. So why is it important in psychology? Why do we need to concern ourselves with this, etc.? And that makes a fully well-developed type of AO3 paragraph. Okay, so because the AO3 is only 6 marks, what I've done is you can actually get away, because remember, you've given 4 marks to your AO2, but I would say, if you, again, write another AO3 paragraph, okay, on the safe side. Okay, so section 2, for example, again, we are discussing, and when you're discussing, you really need to look at both perspectives. So what I've done strategically is I still stayed on the ethical issue, but I looked at it in line with systematic desensitization, which doesn't have as much ethical issues. In fact, it actually doesn't. Because of why it doesn't is because the person is not being exposed to things immediately, or no kind of intense exposure, for example. What systematic desensitization does is it gradually steps it up, basically, so gradual exposure. Okay, and then why I said it's really good is obviously why it's gradual, because it reduces the likelihood of, for example, causing anxiety and distress, etc., and so forth, and it keeps people's mental health intact. Okay, again, why it's also important as well. It's important, for example, because it's very suitable for a range of different clients, and a lot of them may find it a lot more accessible to do with, therefore curing more people. Because if somebody knew that they were going to just be placed in front of their fear, for example, not many people will actually go and do it. Okay, and then finally reaching an overall conclusion, for example. So based on my discussion, I said that how one is actually a bit more unethical than the other. So therefore, I've reached a conclusion that systematic desensitization is a bit more sound in terms of in the ethics compared to the flooding technique, etc. So I've kind of reached a general overarching kind of decision at the end, which makes it a nice solid A-star essay, for example, because I've looked at 2 things from 2 different perspectives. I've weighed it up and think, yeah, actually, we really do need to focus on people's mental health and so forth, because that's really important. Okay, so again, be really, really cautious that we're having hooks all throughout our essay. So we have in contrast, we have things like on the other hand, supporting this, and so forth. So it makes it all flow nicely together. Okay, and then again, discussion coherency is basically you started off with ethics and you're still talking about ethics, but you're talking about ethics from a different stance, a different standpoint, for example. Yeah, you're keeping the same point going on throughout, again, which heightens coherency in your academic essay. So my key recommendations for you, again, writing a psychology essay is not hard, you just need a technique. And I'll be going through a lot more different techniques and tricks with you over the next couple of months, just to make sure that you're ready and you feel quite confident to know how to write these essays, okay? So what do? You go through your own essays, for example. So there may be some essays that you've written before. Start annotating, okay? Start looking at the model answers that I provide to you and look at the things that you need to add and not added. Because if you start doing that, for example, you're able to start identifying and seeing that with this specific essay, you're able to answer even a short answer questions. You're just basically taking out bits and condensing it, for example, for a 2-marker or 4-marker. So essays really are the way to go if you really want to do well in a subject like this. Okay, I have put other answers for this specific section on behavioural treatment, so do check it out. The links in the description of other A-star model answers for the behavioural treatment topic as well. So please do take a look at it. Do compare it with your own, for example. What is good? What things can you add, and so forth. Okay, and again, if you want a weekly A-star model sent to you directly, for example, please do sign up. Again, the link's in the description. Sign up for this. So every week you'll be sent from the Yum Yum Mama website a free essay, A-star model essay answers all throughout up until your examinations. Okay, please don't forget to subscribe to the channel, The Psychological State of Mind. Again, we're going to be putting as many A-star essay techniques, a little exam hacks as well, to support you through to the final months.